Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. On today's show, we get into the latest coaching news with the Mets. We preview the starting pitchers hitting free agency, highlighting who might fit the team. We also go down on the farm and answer your mailbag questions. So subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your shows. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Performance, range, style, 3 different ways to make every drive an occasion. Whatever your reason, there's never been a better time to say, let's take the Cadillac. The all-electric Cadillac family of vehicles, Escalade IQ, Vistic, Optic, and Lyric. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And Joe, it is pretty rare to be a fan of a baseball team that is not in the World Series and somehow get news during the World Series. But with the Mets right now, we've had a lot of different coaching news start to trickle in. And I think that the headliner has to be that, according to Jeff Passan, it's looking like Antoan Richardson might be moving on from the organization. The now claim to fame first base coach that has turned Juan Soto into a 30 stolen base threat and helped the Mets in a lot of different ways in that route this year. So, let's start right there, Joe. Like, what did you think when this kind of came across?
I need an explanation. I need a deep dive. Yeah. I need to understand this. The Mets could fire hitting coaches and pitching coaches, and bench coaches can go, all that, whatever, no problem. I need to know what happened with Antoan Richardson, because this is a situation where his contract was expiring at the end of the World Series, and the Mets invited him back. And it's kind of, I guess, sending like the RSVP for your wedding and you just get a decline in the mail. Like, is that how this worked? I'm not sure, but I need to know, because there was a lot of things that didn't go right for the 2025 Mets, but Antoan Richardson impacting the base running was one of the biggest successes that the Mets had this year. So I know it's kind of like, it's just a first base coach. It's just a base running coach. And maybe in like the big picture, that's still a valid statement, but this is actually feels like a real loss.
It does. Now, I'm with you that this is one of those things that it could be a little dangerous to just have a instant over the top reaction to in the moment without any kind of detail, right? All we know is it seemed like the Mets wanted him back, and they didn't want a lot of their coaching staff back after this year, and that they had to get a contract done. What we don't know is, and I think something else we do know with the Mets, especially when it's not any money that counts towards the luxury tax, money really doesn't matter in this era of the New York Mets anymore. Go to a single Mets game and you'll look around how different the experience is at Citi Field. Obviously, they don't spare. There's no expenses where they're cutting corners, Joe, with this team. So I think what you kind of feel like, okay, well, that's probably not part of the reason. You never know. Maybe Richardson wants a bigger role somewhere else. Maybe that's a part of it, especially with how many, opening things came open with the Mets organization this offseason. Maybe the Mets viewed, and I'm not agreeing with anything or disagreeing with anything here. I'm just trying to lay out a couple educated guesses. Maybe the Mets view the progress of their base running this year more on their infrastructure. They believe it was, as much of the infrastructure as it was Richardson, but he was a big part of that, and nobody could take that away from him. And this is one where I'm also in the phase that the door is never closed anymore until the player or employee is with another team officially, because last year, Joe, how many months did we go through? Oh, Pete Alonso's gone. He's gone. That's it. The door is closed. They can't speak anymore. He's going somewhere else. And then it's like, well, they're talking again. And it just kept ping-ponging back and forth for weeks. So maybe Richardson needs to let that contract expire to go out there and see. Maybe the grass isn't greener elsewhere, and maybe the money is not greener elsewhere either, or the role. So I'm not going to completely close the door on this chapter, but there's no denying, Joe, this feels like it would be a pretty big loss to a team where you nailed it. He was one of the main positives of a tough season.
I'm baffled, Connor, that we are here. Of all things, I am baffled that we are here with Antoan Richardson. But look, it's a situation that he has every right to work where he wants. And you bring up a great point. Like, I sincerely doubt the Mets were like, I don't know what first base coaches make. I doubt they were just like, we will pay you middle of the tier first base coach salary and take it or leave it. Maybe he wants to be not in New York, and I'm not trying to speak for him. Maybe, as you said, maybe he's taking what he did this year and he's like, you know what I really want to do? I want to be a manager one day. And the next step up, maybe I'm going to try to be a bench coach for one of these many managerial openings. And
Which the
that's
Mets already hired that spot.
Right. Exactly. So I think more to be said here, and we will be sure to be on top of the Antoan Richardson sweepstakes, just like we were Juan Soto and Pete Alonso.
Decision.
Yeah. Antoan Richardson, the decision on whatever, November something. Where does he actually end up? But yeah, a loss and just another thing that the Mets have to fill. And we're going to get into something that the Mets actually did fill, reportedly. So, Connor, let's talk about maybe a new hitting coach.
Yeah, Troy Snitker. Obviously, everybody's kind of familiar with that last name, the son of Brian Snitker, the longtime manager of the Atlanta Braves. And Troy is not somebody that, just came out of nowhere. Joe, he's been a hitting coach with the Astros organization for quite a bit of time now, even for a guy that's only 36 years old. He has had clearly, plenty of success in this league as a coach already, because a guy that didn't play for that long in the minor league system, kind of got into coaching right away, was in the Astros organization. I believe he might have even been at the late 20s or 30 years old when he got into the Astros organization. So the Mets have their new hitting coach. And, I always sit here, Joe, with these kinds of hires. I'm never going to sit here and tell you, oh, this is a disaster. Or, oh, it's going to turn everything. But looking at his resume, there are fair reasons to at least be bullish on a move like this.
There's some guys that the Mets will hire that I will know something about, and I could give you something about. I could give you almost nothing about Troy Snitker, so I'm not going to lie to you. I know he is the son of Brian Snitker. I know he is another coach that is younger than me. And what I did put together, so he joined the Astros major league staff in 2019, and he's been a co-hitting coach with another guy, and the Astros moved on from both of them after this season. And look, the Astros are an organization that's really been at the forefront of analytics and systems, and some illegal, some legal, but they've been at the forefront of systems and advanced information. And just looking at OPS, just a stat to use since Snitker has been there, other than 2025, which maybe is a reason why the Astros moved on. There was a lot of injuries. Yordan Alvarez was out a bunch of times.
They missed the whole year.
Yeah, so it was a tough year from an injury standpoint from the Astros. But other than this year, the Astros were never below 8th in baseball in OPS. They topped first in 2019. They were top 5 in 2023. They were second in 2021. So this is a guy that's young, experienced, which, again, experience matters, and comes, I'm going to guess, with, at bare minimum, a knowledge of analytics, because you have to have that to work for the Houston Astros. And now he will join a Mets hitting department, which will be headed by Jeff Albert. The titles are kind of weird. I really need to understand how this is going to shake out from like a day-to-day. Is Jeff Albert just overseeing the strategy and Snitker is implementing the strategy to the players? Right. So that's still a little unclear, but the Mets are bringing in a guy with some gravitas as a hitting coach, and obviously a boatload of experience, and still a young guy. So, yeah, they got another hitting coach, and off we go.
Yeah, and we'll see, how they fill a potential giant void that Richardson can leave. But it's good that things are kind of settling into place on what's a largely new look staff. Listen, we got to wait a little bit of time here before moves can actually be made. Joe and I are going to preview, because we did all the trade candidates with starting pitching last week. So if you missed that show, go back. You can watch it on SMY's YouTube channel or check it out in our podcast feed. We kind of worked out different deals for, the household names, Freddie Peralta, Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens, you name it, they're on there. Today, we're going to go through the starting pitchers that are set to hit free agency, if that's a road the Mets want to go down. But before we do that, Joe, we always like to do our playoff, now World Series check-in. I guess people could see why we spent so many months talking about Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Joe. In 4 playoff games this year, a 1.57 ERA. He's thrown almost 30 innings. I mean, he's only striking out 8.2 batters over 9. So it's not even that he's just overpowering everybody. But the reason I bring this up is, Joe, you can see why the Mets process of going so hard after him. And they were not going to be outbid in that scenario. They just happened to not have their baseball operations in Los Angeles, where Yamamoto wanted to go. But I think it's a good time to kind of highlight his success because, one, we think the Mets are going to be pretty active in the international market in the Steve Cohen and David Stearns era. And two, Joe, now he's 26 years old. It's his second year in the big leagues. You can kind of see how you can reap the rewards of a scouting process like this.
Man, I wish he took the Mets $325 million and not the Dodgers.
How different this year might have been.
So different. And just to go back to that pursuit, what I think a lot of people, I put this out that on Twitter after he threw another complete game for the playoffs and I think it was second complete game in the playoffs, obviously first in the World Series. And I was like, man, wish he took the Mets money. And everyone was like, the Mets should have just went to 360, 370.
Doesn't matter.
What happened here? The Mets were out in front at 325, which was the record-setting biggest money for a pitcher in baseball history. The Dodgers at the time were below 300 on their bid. And Yamamoto and his camp went to the Dodgers and said, if you match this Mets deal, he's a Dodger. And they're like, okay. And they matched it, and that was the end of that. So it wasn't hey, they'll come to 325. Mets, go ahead and offer 350 and maybe he's yours and, keep on going up. But yeah, wish we had him. He's one of the 3 to 4 best pitchers in the sport. And what it does show to me, as you said, from a process standpoint, I know a lot of people live in this world and it's yet to be proven otherwise in actuality of a move occurring, that David Stearns is like allergic to aces. He doesn't want frontline pitchers. He exclusively wants Frankie Montas and Griffin Canning every single offseason. But they really wanted Yamamoto, didn't land him. They really wanted Garrett Crochet last offseason, didn't land him. Now this is the winter where they have to make that move and get that big-time pitcher, whether it is through trade. And as you said, we're going to talk a few free agents here because the trade market, we can make our best guesses at, but you never know if a team is actually going to pull the trigger and move somebody.
Right, and I think it speaks to what you'll hear us talk about with the free agency today. You would think that the Mets are pretty aggressive as soon as they can be in the trade market because they're going to have an idea if it's a price point they want to pay. And if it's not, then you got to be ready to roll when free agency starts because you can't not be willing to hit the price point but miss the wave of free agents. And yes, baseball free agency is much different than the NFL and NBA and NHL. It drags on, but guys still come off the board. Like, you still miss chances to get guys. And one last note on Yamamoto, Joe, because I'm glad you explained that not failure, but where that negotiation, kind of fell apart for the Mets. They once again just couldn't get him. Joel Wolf is the agent of Yamamoto, who also represents Edwin Diaz and did the Edwin Diaz extension. So an agent's job is obviously to get his guy the most money and where he wants to be. But there's also a relationship there at a point where, like, Joel Wolf wasn't just going to run that up to 400 mil. And Yamamoto didn't want to be. He wanted to go to the Dodgers, so it just wouldn't have mattered anyway. It was just a situation where the Mets, and they win with money a lot. They really do. That was one that they simply could not win with money. And now it's going to be on the Mets to potentially win with money in this free agency crop of pitchers. Like we said, I think you and I, and don't let me speak for you, Joe, I'm way in here in a second. I think you and I both expect the Mets to try a trade first. I don't think that their plan 1A is going to be, let's see what 30 to 32-year-old we can give a 6-year deal for $30 million a year. And would you agree with that? Like, I think the Mets are going to try the trade market pretty aggressively first.
Totally. I think that's where the Mets are at organizationally right now. All the prospects that they have at the top of the system, the Mets are probably, in my opinion, and this is not just because I cover the Mets system and I know the Mets system so well, but talking to people that are not with the Mets are one of, if not the most desirable trade partner for anybody that's trying to sell somebody this offseason. What do teams want? High-level prospects. And the Mets have one of, if not the best farm system in baseball currently. What do they want secondary? They would love for those really talented guys to be close to major league ready.
Right.
The Tigers, they don't want to trade Tarek Skubal, for example, for a deal that's based around a guy that's in single A. He may have high potential, but they want guys that are close to big league ready. And if you look at my top 30, which was updated, right after the trade deadline, I'm going to be doing another one sometime before December, just to have us prepared for like winter meetings and trade season. But looking at that list, the top 6 prospects in the Mets system all have been or are current top 100 prospects in baseball. And every single one of them is either in AAA or have made their major league debut already. So it's like the perfect storm of talent that I think teams are going to want to flock to. And I think David Stearns, this is the offseason to strike, whether it is Skubal or Sandy Alcantara or Joe Ryan or Freddie Peralta or the names we discussed last week. But as I just said, Connor, just a minute ago, in a world, the Tigers go, you know what? We're trying to win a World Series. We can't win a World Series without Skubal. We're keeping him. The price on Sandy Alcantara is way too high. Joe Ryan, the Twins decide he's one of the few guys we want to keep. You're going to have to do something about the rotation. And there's a couple options, I think, that are more of your upper rotation guys. And that would be a deviation from kind of what David Stearns has always looked to do.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I wouldn't call it desperate, but I think it would be them operating out of their typical territory, which is why, once again, Joe and I could sit here and make the educated guess that the trade targets, a lot of them, even if it's a 2-year difference in age, if you're going after a pitcher that's 28 compared to, or even 29 compared to, and we're going to get through a lot of free agents here. Like, look at Framber Valdez. He's 32 years old hitting free agency. And I'm not sitting here and saying that, you can't sign anybody over 30 years old, because guess what? That's most of the time what you're dealing with here. But having the year or two difference might be massive for David Stearns and how he kind of evaluates the projections of where guys could potentially fall off a cliff. So, I have the list in front of me, Joe, and just to kind of read through a couple, but I want to know who you actually kind of outline that makes sense for the Mets in terms of what they could be looking for in terms of the profile of the player, the age. And it's a weird one, right? Because you have somebody like Dylan Cease at the top of this list, who's 30 years old. He will turn 30, for next year. These are the ages for the next season. So he's 29 right now. He turns 30 this winter. Not a good contract year for a guy like Dylan Cease. A 4.55 ERA. He always makes all of his starts. Dylan Cease has made 32 starts, at least 32 starts every year since the pandemic season, which you got to tip your cap to that durability and availability. But you look at WAR, wins above replacement, 6.4 in 2022, down to 2.2 in 2023, back up to over a 4 in 2024, and back down to 1.1 in 2025. Like, it's pretty fair to label Dylan Cease, who's viewed as one of the top dogs in this class, as almost an every other year guy, where some years he's a high-end number 2, and then other years he's more of a average number 4. And that's a big difference when you're probably paying out number 1-ish money, Joe.
Connor, he is inconsistent, as you said, but look, maybe he's just due. If it's an every other year thing, then you want Dylan Cease for 2026, naturally.
And then skip till 2028? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. 2027 isn't happening, so it's perfect.
That's what a lot of people believe.
We want Dylan. So I will tell you, Dylan Cease is one arm that I'm incredibly interested in the Mets pursuing. One thing the Mets have lacked is starters going deep. As you mentioned, Dylan Cease takes the ball and pitches into games. They lack guys that get swing and miss. Dylan Cease is among the best in baseball in getting swing and misses. And he's one of those guys where there's a lot of crowd that when talking about David Peterson, it's just like, he is not that good. Look at his expected statistics. And Dylan Cease is a guy that his expected stats are routinely year over year better than his actual stats. And of course, expected stats are good for like information gathering, but the reality is you perform how you perform on the field. And I think the inconsistencies that Cease has shown I think that's going to trim his market a little bit because I would expect a qualifying offer to be here. So that's
Yep.
going to turn some teams off. What this reminds me of, I think this is a better version of Nick Pivetta, who I really wanted the Mets to pursue
Yeah, you
last
liked him a
year.
lot.
And so for me, if I'm the Mets, I would be advantageous on the qualifying offer market here. Look, the farm system's in a good spot. And if you tell me the QO is going to shrink Cease down to like a 3-year deal, and maybe there's an opt-out after 2 or something along those lines, and the money's good, I would trade for a guy, and I would sign Dylan Cease. I think he fits this Mets team. The pitching infrastructure, despite Jeremy Hefner departing the organization, that is still in place. We're going to figure out who the actual pitching coach is going to be, I would assume sometime soon. But Dylan Cease, to me, stands out as an option that I think is not the typical David Stearns, like, take a flyer on this guy. Like, Zach Gallen, to me, is the guy. Like, that's the vintage David Stearns. You sign Zach Gallen for a year, and you're like, maybe he'll figure it out and regain his old form. Cease, I think he's probably just a couple small tweaks and just a little more consistency, but he fits like a glove. And then after that, Connor, if you want to talk here about Framber Valdez and Ranger Suarez, like, those are the guys that would be the deviation completely from the David Stearns kind of thought process.
Yeah, and these guys are all expected to get qualifying offers, by the way, just to get that out of the way. That can, as we've seen, affect markets before. Now, Cease, oddly enough, there is a floor with him. Even when I said there's years where he pitches more like a number 4, like you said, Joe, the advanced stats, the fact that his strikeouts over 9 is really good every year. Like, it's not like a Corbin Burns situation where you're looking at it and going, why is this declining as he's getting closer to free agency? It's really good every year. Framber Valdez is, like, if you want to swing big, Framber Valdez feels like that guy. He's another guy that you look at the last 4 seasons, going back to 2022 up until now, over 200 innings, 198 innings, 176 innings, 192 innings. Framber Valdez throws, man. And when Framber Valdez has been at his best, you're looking at sub 3 ERA level stuff, like big time production from Framber Valdez, who's had a 17-win season, a 15-win season. But there's more with Framber Valdez, Joe. I mean, this is going to be a long-term contract to somebody who is going to turn 32 years old in November. I think he had one of the lower moments of a pending free agent in baseball last year when a lot of people thought he intentionally hit his own catcher, which, make of that situation what you want. But the fact it was a situation is, a little puzzling when you're talking about making probably, I mean, what are we thinking here, Joe? 5-ish year commitment to Framber Valdez? I would say maybe 6.
Yeah, I'd say 5. That feels like 5 is the right number and 6 gets him, like that kind of thing.
Free agency. Yep.
Yeah.
So what do you think of him? And what do you think of my take that while his numbers are better, it feels like there's a lot more variance with signing Framber Valdez than there is Dylan Cease?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the variance comes with the contract, right? Like, I think Dylan Cease is going to end up maybe on the shorter term, and Valdez is probably the gem of this class, right? Like, I think he's the guy that if you're looking for a hoss, for a proven frontline guy that has done it in the playoffs, Framber Valdez is your guy. And this would be the biggest deviation from what Stearns has always kind of looked at. But look, there's going to be a time where this is going to have to happen. The Mets can't, you want to continue to develop your young pitching, and you want to make smart trades, and you want to make smart signings. But if you want to win a World Series and you want to compete with teams like the Dodgers, like, you're going to have to do something uncomfortable at some point in time. And, maybe that is Framber Valdez. Maybe it's not Framber Valdez. It's like, hey, Tarek Skubal is going to get that big contract next year. But I always hate that kind of philosophy of just wait till next year. Like, you have to get better now. And Valdez, to me, fits. Like, there's nothing about him that indicates like things are going down. Like, when we talked about Corbin Burns and we've talked about Carlos Rodon in the past, like these pitchers that we knew were getting big deals, you could kind of poke the holes as far as like how they're going to be. I think Valdez has, a few more years of very high level performance. And how much time are you willing to eat on the back end where things maybe take a downturn? But I try, Connor, and I try to go back to what Andrew Friedman said. And he's obviously the president or whatever he is of the Dodgers, the guy that runs the show over there, he has a long-standing quote that I always cite. If you're always rational about every free agent, you're going to finish third on every free agent.
That's right.
So the question now becomes, is Framber Valdez the guy that you step out of the box for? For me, I kind of lean no.
I would agree with you.
I lean no, but I could see the other side of the coin when it comes to Valdez. Whereas Ranger Suarez, that is a complete no-go for me.
Interesting. I want to hear why, because he would literally be the third player in this conversation. I think when everybody has the conversation about who is the big fish, and I use that term, a little loosely because I don't think any of these guys are on the level that Max Fried was on or when Garrett Cole was a free agent, and on it goes. I think, though, he's going to be in the combo with Cease and Framber Valdez when people talk about free agents. The lefty that's been so good for the Phillies, but you obviously see some holes in his game, Joe, and a guy that also really doesn't strike a lot of people out.
Yeah, look, Ranger Suarez has been good. He's been consistent. He takes the ball for the Phillies. It's not that Ranger Suarez is a bad pitcher. He is certainly a good pitcher, and I don't like facing him necessarily. This is a game of a guy who probably, as you said, is getting that 5-6 year type of deal for good money. This is a guy whose game is entirely based on throwing strikes and inducing weak contact. He doesn't throw hard. Right now, his average fastball velocity is in the 7th percentile in baseball at 90 miles an hour. And I know there's
as
a lot of people,
29-year-old, now 30.
There's a lot of people that are going to scream, all these guys throwing 96, they're just going to get hurt. Look, whether he gets hurt or not is one thing. The concern here in modern baseball, if you're throwing in the 80s, which he is one tick away from his fastball being in the 80s, I would like to know one frontline pitcher that throws an 88, 89 mile an hour fastball. And this is not intended to insult the pitcher I'm about to insult because he was good for the Mets. How long before Ranger Suarez is just Jose Quintana? And you're paying for a Jose Quintana type of pitcher for how long at the rate as if he is maybe not quite Max Fried, but in that realm financially. So for me, I'm out on Suarez. I think Valdez has better stuff. Suarez has, the curveball and changeup were elite this year. And just for me, velocity matters. I don't care kind of whatever anyone says. These hitters are used to seeing in the mid 90s. If you throw 89, 88, that's like batting practice to these guys. So you better put it every single time, knees in black. And if you don't, you're going to get beat around. So I would let somebody else give Ranger Suarez that big deal. I'd be more interested on the free agent side in a Dylan Cease. I would consider a Framber Valdez, though maybe not my preference. I would think about it. And then if you want to go a step down for like just a maybe closer to a back end type guy, Shane Bieber actually looked good coming back from Tommy John surgery after Toronto traded for him. So he wouldn't be eligible for the qualifying offer. His fastball velocity is up from pre-Tommy John, and he had a couple decent showings in the playoffs. So I'd say he's just another name maybe to keep on the radar.
Yeah, and then after that, I mean, those are going to be the big guys outside of the trade candidates. I mean, I think we expect the Mets to always add one of their kind of projects, right?
This year's Griffin Canning. Who is this year's Griffin Canning?
Exactly. And then the previous year, we know they hit big on Manaea and Severino. And, this year it felt like it's funny how it's viewed because everybody, and when I say everybody, it's a majority of people kill Stearns for how the pitching went this year. And there's a lot we've said on this pod. There's a lot of reasons. Stearns had a bad year. No one's denying that. It doesn't mean he should be fired. No one also thinks that with logic. But Clay Holmes was pretty good for what they paid for him and considering the project that he was. Griffin Canning, I know he was pitching. He was kind of regressing right before the injury. But Griffin Canning, for what he costs, was pretty awesome. And then he tore his Achilles. That's bad luck. That's not bad process. So it was just other moves that, or lack thereof, that kind of hurt them. You brought up Zach Gallen, Joe, who could technically have a qualifying offer attached to him, which would really nuke his value in my opinion, but we'll see about that. Is there anybody else on the market that you look at and go, man, he just screams 1 year with an option attached to it on the second year that the Mets are going to try to make into their pitching lab number 4 or 5 starter?
I don't think Michael King's going to get a short-term deal.
No, I think he'll get a pretty good deal.
I think he's going to get length. It's tough to identify that guy, but it's going to be someone ugly, someone like Mets, like not physically ugly.
Nestor Cortez.
Connor, I swear on everything that's holy. I was about to say someone like Nestor Cortez.
Yeah.
That's the guy. They're going to sign Nestor Cortez. Mendoza's going to be like, I remember Cortez from my time with the Yankees.
Right.
He's the exact kind of guy we're looking for. And the thing that's going to drive Mets fans crazy is they're going to make that move early in the offseason.
Right.
Before they make the bigger splash on whatever they're going to do, they're going to get that back end flyer kind of guy. And it's just going to put people in an absolute uproar. What did David Stearns learn anything from 2025? Here he is back dumpster diving. But Connor, I love that you brought up Nestor Cortez because I literally was going to say somebody like him. It seems exactly like the kind of guy that they'll pursue.
Yeah, Cortez comes to mind. I'll give you one more, Joe, that wouldn't shock me just because he's somebody that can get players to chase, although the raw numbers have not really been good, especially after how good we thought he was going to be for so long. Chris Paddock wouldn't shock me either. Just a guy that he's just bounced around since being with the Padres. He's unfortunately kind of hovered right around a 5 ERA. He's thrown plenty of innings over the last, I would say year plus. He's thrown plenty of innings, but that one wouldn't shock me either. It's going to be somebody of that ilk, to take a phrase from you. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be the number 4 or number 5. It's just a dart throw while Jonah Tong starts the year in the minors. And it's not a guarantee. I mean, Nolan McLean's going to be here, obviously, but it's not a guarantee that Brandon Sproat starts out the year with the big league club. I think he has a really good chance. But these are just insurances to protect your minor league arms when you need a little time.
Do we go back a couple years in time? We wanted Lucas Giolito on the Mets.
I know.
Lucas Giolito a 1-year kind of guy? I mean, his arm may or may not stay together, but he showed some decent stuff for Boston this year, and you could always kind of circle back there. But I would say the real crux of this segment is to let fans know the Mets are going to probably sign another Griffin Canning, Frankie Montas.
And you will hate it in the moment, but you have to deal with it.
You'll be mad. Just suck it up. It's going to be part of the situation, and it's going to be someone competing for the back end of the rotation. But this is the year, and Connor and I, both agree, as we've said, this is the year where Stearns needs to step outside of his comfort zone one way or another, whether that is maybe giving that extra year to Framber Valdez that we wouldn't want to, or trading a couple prospects they'd prefer not to bring in Skubal, Ryan, Peralta, Alcott, all the names we mentioned. This is the offseason that I think David Stearns has to, and not just has to, I think will step outside his comfort box.
I think so too, especially after the year Soto had and knowing what window this team is in and, kind of putting your foot on the gas to make right of a year that went wrong. Let's go down on the farm. This week, Down on the Farm is presented by our friends at Binghamton University. And Joe, somebody that we talked about at the end of the year, he didn't get to actually appear in a game for the Mets, but he was so good for AAA Syracuse. He pitched to a sub-2 ERA. He was striking out 11 over 9, and we think can really compete for a spot in the Mets bullpen. How about former 13th round pick Dylan Ross?
Binghamton University, the school that produced current Mets minor leaguer Nick Roselli, 11th round pick.
There's your fun fact of the Mets pod day.
There you go. We got you. Always have you with these kind of anecdotes that you didn't know you needed. But Dylan Ross, he's a guy the Mets actually added to the active roster during the last weekend of the season. And
they pitched Ryan Stanek on the last day instead.
No one noticed because he didn't get into a game, as you mentioned. But
great times.
I think Ross is a guy that's going to compete for a spot in the opening day bullpen. It's a 3-pitch mix. His best pitch really is his splitter that he'll throw in the low 90s, generated an over 40% swing and miss rate on it at the AAA level. It is absolutely filthy. He happens to have a fastball that'll touch 100 miles an hour, sit in the upper 90s, but it's kind of just a pretty good pitch. And a slider is a pitch he throws a little less, but he also, got some swings and misses there on it. The biggest thing for Dylan Ross is going to be control and command. He had an unsustainable 17.3% walk rate. Like that's a number that just simply won't play at the major league level. But the Mets can make a couple tweaks. And one thing I like to point out when people bring up the walk rate about Ross, he's a 2-time Tommy John guy. From the years 2019 through 2024, Dylan Ross threw a combined 35 innings in any kind of baseball across 5 years. So this is not a guy with a ton of experience. So he's an older guy by age, but not an older guy by experience. So I think there is some belief that more reps, getting more into the swing of things, he had a healthy season. I think that could at least improve the command. If he could get to average command, I think Dylan Ross could be a seriously impactful reliever at the big league level.
You're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SMY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Joe, let's get into our mailbag segment. Thank you to Matt for the 5-star review. He is NY Mets 87. My question is on Sproat. What exactly does he do well? McLean has the insane movement, Tong the deceptive fastball with induced vertical break. Sproat kind of just seems like he's got a fastball that's hard but very straight, decent secondary stuff, but nothing lights out. Iffy command. I'm not hating on him. He's gotten results. I'd just like to know what it is scouts love about him.
Sounds like you're hating on him. What exactly does he do well? What an
for how good he
hater,
pitched the last couple of weeks of the season.
Look, there's a reason I have Brandon Sproat behind Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong in my prospect rankings. He doesn't have that special pitch or that special trait. What I think he thrives at is everything is pretty good. And I think that gives him a bit of a higher floor with just a lesser ceiling than the guys like McLean with the crazy movement, as he mentioned, Jonah Tong with the couple really special pitches. I think Sproat translates more as like a number 4, which is perfectly fine, gets paid plenty of money. The fastball velocity, while it is a little bit straight, he added the sinker this year and really emphasized it more, and that's helped him against left-handed hitters. As he mentioned, he had the changeup has been good. The curveball is a pitch that really took a big step forward this year, and you saw that at the big leagues, making big league hitters look foolish at times. So it's not the most special repertoire, but I think it's just good, like all around pretty good. And he's a guy that I think will pitch in the big leagues for quite a long time. And even if it's a number 4 starter, you're talking about a guy. Look, number 4 stars are getting closer to $20 million a year now.
Right.
Like that's the price of pitching.
With very little upside.
Exactly.
Sproat at least still has upside.
Like theoretically, you could unlock a little more with one of these pitches. And with modern day pitching development and coaching, what he is today doesn't necessarily mean that's what he's going to be 7 months from now. Right. Jonah Tong didn't throw a Vulcan change before sometime in the 2025 season, and it is now considered a plus major league pitch. So it's just the way these things can develop. So I appreciate the question. I think it's a valid one. I think Sproat, I'm looking at him more as a floor guy that's more of your number 4-ish type starter than Tong and McLean, who I think have the chance to pitch more at the top of a rotation.
All right, our next question here is from Ari, Obi-Wan Kenari on Twitter. Are there any stud all-around young first baseman we can poach from another team? Kind of like when Atlanta got Olsen from Oakland.
Lucky.
Think of that, Joe.
Lucky they were.
Well, that was a trade that we just thought was almost unfathomable, honestly, at the time. That was when you could accuse Oakland of just being a feeder system for the Braves with some of those.
Sean Murphy. Murphy kind of turned out to be a bust for Atlanta, but like at the time they traded him for seemingly nothing, and Olsen wasn't traded for much. Like trying to think, well, it's funny. The
A's have multiple talented first basemen right now, but they're not going anywhere.
No, I don't think the A's are moving Nick Kurtz or Tyler Soderstrom. I think they're good there. Would Detroit move Spencer Torkelson?
Which was a combo last year.
Yeah, it was. Like that's one that maybe you think about. Otherwise, if there is a young, awesome first baseman that the Mets could get on the low, I would love if you could leave in the comments or let us know on Twitter or wherever you could reach us, like who you think that first baseman is, because I have no clue who it is. The only name I could think of is Torkelson. You know what? How
Who's
about
there's a lot of risk there if they even
ton
answered the phone.
ton of risk. Another name, he's been oft injured, but the talent is theoretically off the chain. Is Boston done with Tristan Casas? But like at the same time, like
Great
I
question.
don't want to trade for Tristan Casas and say, hey, Mets fans, Pete Alonso has departed, but don't you worry, we got Tristan Casas. Like that to me doesn't really fit the mold of a proper first base replacement if Pete were to depart.
Yeah, Cassis is a guy that every time he's up and healthy, he's been a pretty dang good hitter. I mean, you look
Just
at 2000,
always hurt.
he's just always hurt. I mean, 132 games he played in 2023, he had an 856 OPS. He was hitting home runs, he was drawing walks, he hit for contact. And then the last 2 seasons, he's played 63 and 29 games. So the ironic part of you bringing up Cassis, Joe, is that, I mean, if you were setting an odds market right now, wouldn't you consider the Red Sox one of the favorites to sign Pete Alonso? I would.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of teams that are going to be in on Pete Alonso, and
No, I don't either.
We're not going to make this a Pete Alonso discussion. We have 500 more of those to go this offseason because that ship ain't changing anytime soon, is my guess. But if you told me teams, like I'm thinking Boston, I'm thinking
the Angels.
The Angels are the crazy one that I think I almost feel bad for the Angels because like so much is just bad there, and everyone's just like, huh. Who's going to get incredibly overpaid? Who's going to do it? The Angels.
By the Angels.
Yeah, that's who's going to do it. Like, does Cincinnati make a run? Like, they're kind of like waiting to like eventually make someone take their money. Like, I struggle to see who like a clear fit for Pete Alonso is. But wouldn't it be something if the Red Sox traded Tristan Casas to the Mets and then like the next day signed Pete Alonso to a 5-year contract? Holy moly! That Mets spot would be something.
It would be. The fan base would be enraged. I really like Casas as a player. I think he's had some bad luck. There's worse options. But like you said, you can only like hit your risk button so many times on a roster like the Mets. You're not playing in a field of like, if a couple things go right, maybe we can make the playoffs. That's not the expectations of the Mets right now. So
you
David
need some stability.
Exactly. Michael Valenti, 8873 on YouTube asked, Pablo Lopez seems like a perfect fit for the Mets, and with the Twins trending in a direction to sell, wouldn't it be best to contact the Twins about Lopez if they miss out on Joe Ryan? That's a blast from the past, Joe. We've talked about Lopez before. He was even on the Twins.
Yeah. Pablo Lopez is a good pitcher, man. And he missed a lot of the year with shoulder, so you're going to have to really dive into the medicals there and make sure it's good. But to be honest with you, this feels like more of a buy low kind of thing that the Mets can do because Minnesota is wanting to move salary. It's clear they're heading in a different direction after their trade deadline. They may be more inclined to keep Joe Ryan around, but they don't need to pay Pablo Lopez. Like, I think he's making like $20 million a year or something along those lines. Maybe you could check that here really quick.
He's got 2 years left of team control, Joe.
Yeah. Like Pablo Lopez, if you don't want to sign Dylan Cease, if you don't want to sign Shane Bieber, if you don't want to sign Zach Gallen, maybe you make a smaller trade for Pablo Lopez, and that is your back-end-ish type of guy, and you're signing him for, I would guess it's like, 2 years, 42 million bucks, maybe? Something like that?
So he has 2 years left on his deal. And he averages out to about like 17.5-ish million a year.
So not even that Connor, trading for Pablo Lopez is signing Frankie Montas.
That's the most disgusting thing you've ever said on this show. That's true.
But a better pitcher if he's healthy. So the key with Lopez, I think, is going to be diving into the medicals, making sure the shoulder's okay. Which diving into Montas's medicals might have been better. But Lopez, I think that would be a good name to watch, and someone we haven't talked about yet because we're kind of like, I don't want to say tunnel vision, but really focused on like the guys that we think are like frontline guys available in trade. There's going to be that next tier available in trade too, and the Mets need guys like that as well. So yeah, I would talk to Minnesota about Pablo, no question.
Well, as you highlighted, there's different pathways to this. Maybe, do you have the dream and you go out and get one of the aces in a trade and then sign your mid-tier starter, your middle of the rotation starter? Okay, that's the easy one to point to. But what if you can't? The prices are just absurd. Teams don't. Guess what? The Pirates might not want to move Paul Skeens. Okay, so
I don't think they do. I don't think so.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of other players though as well.
Yeah.
You might be in a situation where the Mets surprise us and they go out and they sign Framber to a monster deal and they make a trade for a middle of the rotation pitcher instead. So you just have to be prepared for everything, because you just have to be so pliable as a GM in a situation where you just don't know the prices and the availability on everything until the floodgates open. Our last question from Mark Richard, Richard38 on Twitter. How long would a proposed Diaz contract have to be for you to think about walking away? I would be fine at 4 or even 5 years, but if someone offers 6, I don't know if I could get there. I think that's totally fair, Joe, as much as we love Diaz. I mean, it's a little different with him because of how important he is to the Mets organization specifically, and that the Mets don't have a clear pathway to replace him right now. And Diaz will be 32 years old next season. It would be a little wild to have your closer under contract through his age 37 season or 38 season. And I say that because is there another team that's doing that for a reliever in this era of baseball? So I totally agree with Mark here. And I don't think it'll get to that, Joe.
Yeah, I think I'm exactly in line with you and Mark here. 6 years, I don't know if I could really justify that. And
it feels unnecessary.
It feels, as you said, who is going to do it? The reality, the sport is moving away from paying relievers big money for big lengths of time. And who's going to do it? Like, I want to know who
the Angels?
No. the Angels, 100%. They need a closer. They need to contend right now. 6 years, $25 million a year. Edwin Diaz, welcome to closing for Reed Detmer's games like 7 times a year. Like, that's how many saves opportunities you're going to get.
Where Pete Alonso hit 2 home runs.
Imagine Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz, a package deal to the Angels. Oh my god!
Just boatloads of money, and it's July. Edwin Diaz slams the door for the Angels' 19th win of the season in July as Pete Alonso hit his 9th home run.
Connor, we are at the point right now. We are so delirious.
We have nothing to talk about.
We're running low on fumes for things until the offseason actually starts. The positive here. This is going to be, no matter what, the last week of baseball.
Yes.
Regardless of how the World Series ends, Game 7 would be Saturday. So there is no more.
Way, awesome World Series. Let me just get right out of the gate. It's got everything you could want so far.
So far, so great. As we record here, I still am saying gentleman's sweep for the Dodgers. I still think they're just going to rally off the rest. But I would love for the series to go 6 or 7 games and at least give Toronto a shot. But yeah, I'm ready for it to end just so we could start actual hot stove, actual moves, actual things. It's going to sneak up on us. I know it's been a long month, and I check YouTube to see how many people are watching, and I check all this stuff just because I'm a numbers guy. I appreciate the fact that we still have so many people that are watching us talk about rumors before there could even be rumors. Like, it's the rumor before the rumor is what we're doing, and everyone is invested. So really appreciate it. But it's going to get even better soon. So get excited. We're going to touch on everything that happens. And I hope this Edwin Diaz conversation that we're closing the show with, we get that 4-year. I'd go to 5 if someone was at 4 and he came to the Mets and said, give me the 5th year and I stay. I'm not going to I'm not letting Edwin Diaz walk out the door over that extra year. But I feel pretty confident to say I think Edwin Diaz will be back with the Mets in 2026 by whatever the contract is, and just hopefully the old Angels, they'll come out with the 10-year deal.
This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Performance, range, style, 3 different ways to make every drive an occasion. Whatever your reason, there's never been a better time to say, let's take the Cadillac. The all-electric Cadillac family of vehicles, Escalade, IQ, Vista, Optic, and Lyric. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. Remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a review with a question, and we'll look forward for a future mailbag, as you heard today. And, of course, you can watch the show on SNY's YouTube channel. Become a subscriber over there as well. Thanks so much, everybody. Truly, the diehards are listening this time of year. Joe and I appreciate you very much. We'll talk to you next week.